Hey, I'm NichBoy and welcome to Pocket for Wednesday, the 18th of May. Today on the show, the dead rise, ducks all eyes, and opinion flies. Alright, here's what's been making headlines, and first up, what is dead may never die, because IGN has acquired GameTrailers. After being shut down by parent company Defy Media in February, GameTrailers has had its name rights and content licenses picked up by IGN. IGN released a statement saying, "We are big fans of the content GameTrailers has published over the years and want to ensure that the videos will survive online. We have added the GT YouTube channel to our network and are scouring hard drives and uploading back catalog content that never made it across." According to GameTrailers co-founder Brandon Jones, it won't just be an archive, as IGN will use the channel to continually publish video game trailers and maybe more. Two titans of the industry finally together. It's like those two friends of yours who are destined to hook up. You know it, they just don't realize it yet, until one day she wakes up and she's like, "Oh my god, I love him." So then she purchases the rights to his corpse for an undisclosed amount of money. Obviously, he needs to be dead in this metaphor, otherwise it doesn't quite make sense. Moving on now to EA's biggest and smallest sequels. EA held an investors meeting overnight, which saw EA Studios boss Patrick Soderlund loosen his lips on some interesting developments. He teased that the sequel to Star Wars Battlefront may include a single-player campaign. Hallelujah! According to Sutherland, the decision to forego a campaign in the 2015 release was to ensure that DICE were able to launch side by side with The Force Awakens. While the game was undeniably a success, it has shipped 14 million copies, critics and fans lamented the lack of story content, which negatively impacted review scores. Sutherland said to the investors, "Are we happy with the 75 rating? No. Is it something we're going to cure going forward? Absolutely." Sutherland also revealed that EA has extended its agreement with Unravel developer Coldwood Interactive. The publisher will be working with Martin Salin and the Coldwood team to bring Yanni's next adventure to life. Bethesda have forced the removal of a Fallout 4 mod from Nexus Mods. And while normally this would be the story of the giant overreach of publishers trying to stifle player creativity, here it's justified because the mod was the entire unreleased Far Harbor DLC pack. The upcoming DLC was part of a closed beta Bethesda was running with a small group of players, and some communist decided that $24.99 US was way too much to pay for DLC, so decided to release it for free. Nexus Mods have taken down the DLC, although a cached webpage shows that at least 800 people got to it before it was removed. Far Harbor launches for the rest of us tomorrow. And staying with mods, Ark Survival Evolved have added a player-made mod as official content. Available now, The Center is a Tolkien-esque map that doubles the size of the existing game. Ark's lead designer Jeremy Stieglitz said that the mod was bought for a considerable amount of money that equated to multiple months' salary for a creative. So about $36. Not only that, but Studio Wildcard even ended up hiring the guy who made it. Going forward, Stieglitz said, "We intend to continue to regularly select what we consider to be the most polished mods from among the many thousands available on the Steam Workshop. And then, when we determine what we think are the standout exemplars, we'll make more offers." The Center is one of two mods that have been purchased by Studio Wildcard as official content, the second being Primitive Plus, which will be released in July. The System Shock remaster is headed to Kickstarter, and then probably Steam. Night Dive Studios revealed that they will be turning to crowdfunding to develop their tribute to the classic sci-fi RPG. Studio director Stephen Kick revealed that he had acquired the IP late last year and that he planned to use it to craft a faithful recreation of the 1999 original in a modern engine. It's unclear whether Kick sought out traditional publishing money before deciding to head down the crowdfunding path, but the studio's Kickstarter page is set to launch on the 29th of June. And there's been official word that Pillars of Eternity 2 is in development. Obsidian Entertainment CEO Fergus Urquhart nonchalantly dropped this info at a conference in Krakow yesterday afternoon. Talking generally about utilizing crowdfunding, Urquhart said that the studio will consider it for the sequel to their successfully crowdfunded RPG, Pillars of Eternity. When asked to elaborate on the unannounced sequel, he said, "Eternity 2 is not announced, but it seems silly for me to not acknowledge it though. If someone asks, 'Are you working on it?' I respond, 'Well, wouldn't you work on it?' So then they say, 'So you must be working on it.' And I'm like, well, yeah." And speaking of sequels, Dragon Ball Xenoverse is getting one too. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has been announced along with a trailer. There's a lot going on in this trailer that I don't completely understand, but others will. If you're one of those people, the game will launch on PS4, Xbox, and Steam this year, and more will be revealed at E3 in June. And finally, end times are ahead as more information about the Tetris movie comes forward. Threshold Global Studios announced that their Tetris film will be an epic sci-fi thriller and will have a story arc which will span over a trilogy. The budget for the initial film is $80 million, with filming set to commence next year in China. There's not a word in that story that I'm happy with. Moving on now, it's time for Thing of the Day with the third favorite fan-voted Thing of the Day titles brought to you by Schmitty. It's Thing of the Day. Thanks to modder Zully the Witch, you can now experience the horrors and your failures of Dark Souls 3 in first person. Zully has created a first person mod for the game, and it actually looks quite playable. It's Thing of the Day. Where are the arms? I'm joined now by Sam Drake's stand-in, Goose.
Hi there.
Not even the good Drake.
Nah.
Now, you're here because you had an opinion last night.
Correct.
On the television.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that and other people's reactions to said opinion.
That's the plan.
What was that opinion?
So the opinion was about review scores, specifically the backlash that occurred when IGN gave Uncharted 4 a preliminary score of 8.8. The people on the internet did not like this, so they took to the internet to hurl abuse at IGN, so I took to the television to shut them down.
You did, and then that sort of led in your IMO to a larger conversation about review scores in general, right scores for reviews, etc. Now we got some responses. The people came out in force, and can I tell you, brother to brother, I was so proud of that. I think you did such a good job.
Thank you.
And it was so nice to not have a single thing to be angry with you
So
about.
are you saying this is the first IMO that you agree with me entirely?
Yes.
Success!
But not everyone feels that way.
No.
The first person who wrote in is Robert Warnes, who says that I think Eurogamer has the right idea of ditching review scores and just having avoid, neutral, and recommend label for games. There isn't really a science for scoring a game, just a factor of it being enjoyable or not. How do you feel about that sort of like yes, no, indifferent?
I think that's just another label that you're giving the scoring system. I think it's a neat way to look at it because I think, as I said, there's no science behind scoring a game, but to maybe make it a little easier for people to digest, because scores do get very specific in terms of you get down to decimals and people really don't know what to read out of it and to translate out of it. So to lump them into categories, sort of buy, borrow, or sell, or that kind of stuff, it just gives it something for people to relate to better. And I think it works for me, but I think on a broader sense, it's the same scoring system essentially.
I think the twist of it that I like is when sites do something like play it if you like and then blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then avoid if you don't like blah blah blah. Because it gives you because even with, avoid, neutral, or recommend, for me, I would go, like Doom, I would go, well, I don't really like it, but I know other people like it.
Sure.
And I don't feel neutral about it because I don't really like it. You know what I mean?
It's funny because then you're finding new ways to describe to the audience how you would or wouldn't recommend this game, which essentially is the review.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's the context of the review.
It's everything above that bit.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. I've seen the whole sort of gamut of different scoring systems growing up reading magazines. There was like hot or not, and there was like tomato ratings and all this kind of stuff.
I like the PC Gamer one when you load up the page and it goes.
Yeah, and you're like, yes, it only got to here. So there's interesting ways to do it, but at the same time, it comes down to the audience just reading the review and getting the context.
Absolutely. Our next comment comes in from Aiden Flett. Great name. Who says, I mostly agree with Goose's argument, but I think reviewers should be careful. On one hand, I think it's perfectly fine for a reviewer to say they dislike a game or part of a game they personally didn't enjoy for whatever reason, and those kind of reviews, like Lucy's Uncharted review, absolutely don't warrant such hate. On the other hand, though, I think it's unfair for a critic to label a game as bad or give it a low score because some of the features they didn't personally like Low scores really need to be reserved for games that have things functionally wrong with them, like controls not working or the gameplay being repetitive or monotonous. How do you feel about that?
Aiden. I completely disagree. I would say that a review itself is personal. There's no other way you can really approach it. Sure, you can pull apart, mechanical failures of a game, elements that don't work, and that is what the bottom of the scoring system is reserved for, I agree. But at the same time, if a person is not having a good experience, or even just an average experience with the game because of some personal reason, that totally has to come across in their review, and they're totally justified in doing that. An example is, and I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I reviewed Undertale, and I gave that a 3.5, which I consider to be better than average. I had a good time with the game, but I didn't love it in the way that the internet fell in love with it, and I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But I got a bit of backlash from that. People saying it was just a tad, saying it was a 5 out of 5 game or 10 out of 10 game, and they took it personally, which I did my best to placate on the internet by saying that here's things I did and didn't like, but at the same time, it's my experience with it.
Yeah.
And it could have been that at that time I just wasn't really clicking with those mechanics or that art style or things like that, and I think
that's fine. That's fine.
But people,
you're allowed to not click with that.
Exactly, and people, I would hope, like with any review, can attach themselves in some way to the personality behind it. There's a reason I'm presenting it, your name is attached to it when you write an article.
You're owning it.
Yeah, it's not like you're this disembodied voice that has no personality behind it.
You're not just floating Dark Souls hands.
Exactly. So I would hope that people have at least got to know stuff I like and don't like, and they can take that review with a grain of goose salt, and they can make their own, judgments based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people have learned that you don't like Undertale. It's interesting compared to like film reviews that you play a game, you physically have to do something interactive with it. That we as a community really judge a game based on the mechanics of it, and not just the gameplay mechanics, but the graphics and the sound design and the moment to moment of everything. And as opposed to like a film or an album or something where you rarely read a film review where they go, oh, the lighting was really bad.
They can pull apart elements of it, but they don't ever go like, oh, they forgot to put the film in the shutter and like.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not full errors that can happen.
And it generally doesn't knock off stars. But part of it has got to do with the kinds of things that we're reviewing, that they're so interactive. But also, I think we're still a young medium where we're figuring out the ideal quote unquote way to deliver an experience. And
and plus there are such different ways to experience games versus films. Regardless of what genre the film is, you're still sitting there sort of consuming that.
Everyone has the same objective
way.
experience where it's like they see exactly the same thing as everybody else all the time. Yeah, it is interesting. Okay, guys, buckle in.
What's happening?
Because Riordan Davies wrote in, and Riordan, let me just open by saying you're a valued member of the community. Riordan says, while there's no right score, reviewers' roles should be to know their audience and aggregate an appropriate score. The leader must do what's right for the group, so perhaps the reviewer, Lucy, misjudged her position or audience. When you publish a review, you sacrifice that individual focus and must take others into account. It's my opinion. Doesn't cut it. Riordan, I want to reiterate, you're a valued member of this community.
Opinions are all that matters.
It's the only thing that cuts it! It is the only reason you're here!
I have a segment based on opinions. You take that away, I dissolve, I disappear.
This entire show is just my opinion. Here, when I'm sitting at the computer, it's all just me talking about what I think. It's the only reason you know that this show exists.
You killed us, Riordan.
Okay.
Where is coming from there?
The idea that like a leader must do what's right for the group. So I think what Riordan's saying here is that that when you're reviewing something, you need to take into account the people who read this have expectations and knowledge about something.
And assume knowledge that they are aware of video games and they understand certain things. You don't have to completely pander to the...
Yeah, and to an extent I agree in that you go, okay, if you're a big video game website, your game reviewer should be someone who plays video games. It shouldn't be like a chef who's never played a video game. Like that works because you're playing to the audience.
Sure.
But the idea that you have to go, what will everybody else think about this? So I need to take that into account. It actually undercuts the fundamental idea of reviewing anything, of objective or like being able to remove yourself from something and give it an honest opinion is just...
And I think it's interesting because I've almost fallen into that sort of pitfall a few times writing reviews that I've done for the show, because it is something that weighs on your mind. You can't shake that you're aware that people are going to watch or listen to this review, and you do think, oh, am I saying something that's too specific to my experience with it there, or am I being too broad here? Should I tailor that for the audience? And it does take a moment to step back and go, hang on, no, this is about how I played this game. I don't need to tailor this so someone out there can, assuming this is how they're going to play it. I think on top of that, sort of saying to aggregate his score, I think by that he means sort of bringing in all aspects of the game to give it one holistic score at the end. Which, look, makes sense. You have to bring in every element of the game you just experienced to come up with a score. But I think if you are kind of, I mean, there's something like Metacritic out there which will take in numerous people's scores, and you'll be able to get just like a baseline figure, and that serves a purpose. But that is not the score. That is just, you know, an amalgamation of other people's scores, so you can kind of get the
with all the
figure.
Nuance removed.
Exactly. And that nuance is what makes the substance of a review, what gives you the information that you can really take away from it. So,
absolutely. I mean, but
it's risky.
Like, again, just got to reiterate, Riordan. If I am pronouncing your name correctly, you are a valued member of this community.
You step it back there just to be like, just if I am pronouncing your name correctly, just to get on his good side.
I'm going to finish up here with one last comment, which I feel like is probably the crux of the argument here.
Okay.
This comes in from Hamish Walker, who says, I think this also came from the backlash that Goose got for his Undertale review.
We covered this.
Yes, we did, but I feel like it's time to cover it again.
No!
You did not factor in that everybody else loves that game, and you should have.
Well, they're wrong.
Because how can that many people be wrong? I gotcha, Sam Stand-in. All right, that's it for today's episode of Pocket My Pocketeers. Let us know in the comments what you think about the whole review discussion, and whose reviews do you take into opinion? I'm curious to see who you listen to in terms of the community when it comes to advice for video games. And while you're on the internet, check out Good Game on Facebook, YouTube, and iView. Want to meet fellow Pocketeers? Then join the Pocketeers Facebook group and Steam group. You can follow Good Game on Twitter at Good Game TV. Follow Pocket for all our opinions at NichBoy, at Pierreth, at GG8, at Monkey, and at SamGee. He's at Goose Mangus, and there are links to everything I just said in the description below. Today's Thing of the Day classic graphic was made by Schmitty. Schmitty, thank you very much for making me look far more suave than I actually am. There's a mug and a tiny t-shirt on the way to you. Until tomorrow, NichBoy out.
Goose out.